Emma hadn't wanted to come. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks earlier in the form of a stiff cream colored envelope, as if her mother thought fancy stationery could somehow cover years of emotional distance. Inside was a simple note: family dinner at the lake house, Sunday 6 p.m. In honor of your father, no warmth. No please come, no mention of Lily. Emma had stared at the card for a long time before tossing it onto the kitchen counter. She had every reason to ignore it. Since her divorce 2 years ago, her relationship with her mother, Diane, had gone from strained to nearly non-existent. Diane had never approved of Emma's marriage, and when it failed, she treated it less like heartbreak and more like proof of Emma's bad judgment. But then Lily saw the envelope. "Is that Grandpa's house?" her 8-year-old daughter had asked, eyes lighting up. Emma softened immediately. Lily had adored the lake house. Every summer before Grandpa passed away, they spent weekends there feeding ducks, making pancakes in the old kitchen, and listening to Grandpa tell stories from the dock. More than anything, Lily loved Grandpa, and Grandpa had loved her right back. "Can we go, Mom?" Lily asked, practically bouncing. "I miss the lake." So here they were. As Emma drove down the familiar winding road lined with tall pine trees, Lily pressed her face to the car window. "It looks the same," she whispered. The lake house came into view just as the sun began to lower, casting golden reflections over the water. It was a large cedar home with wide windows and a wraparound porch, beautiful, peaceful, and painfully full of memories. Emma parked and took a deep breath. "You okay?" Lily asked. Emma forced a smile. Always. Inside, the house was already crowded. Her older brother, Jason, stood near the fireplace talking loudly about work. Her younger sister, Nicole, scrolled on her phone while pretending to listen. Her aunt and uncle sat in the dining room arranging dishes, and at the center of it all was Diane. Perfect hair, perfect blouse, perfect expression of disapproval. She looked Emma up and down as if assessing damage. "You're late. Nice to see you too, Mom." Diane's eyes flickered to Lily. "Hello, Lily." Not warm, not cold, just obligatory. Lily, too polite to notice the difference, smiled brightly. "Hi, Grandma." Dinner was as tense as Emma expected. Conversation floated awkwardly between weather updates, work promotions, and shallow family gossip. Every time Emma tried to contribute, Diane somehow redirected the topic elsewhere. Then came the inevitable. "So," Diane said while cutting her chicken with surgical precision, "have you thought any more about moving back in with family? Raising a child alone can't be easy." Emma set down her fork. "I'm doing fine." Jason snorted softly into his wine glass. Diane ignored him. "Fine is relative." Emma inhaled slowly. "Thanks for the concern." It wasn't concern, of course. It was criticism disguised in pearls. Under the table, Lily nudged Emma. "Mom," she whispered excitedly, a little too loudly, "can I sleep in Grandpa's room tonight?" The question was innocent. Sweet even. Emma felt her chest tighten. Before she could answer, Diane looked up sharply. "No." The table went silent. Lily blinked. "Why?" Diane dabbed her mouth with a napkin before answering, as though preparing something completely reasonable. "That room is for family." Emma frowned. "Lily is family." Diane turned to Emma with a look so cold it seemed to lower the room's temperature. "Let's not pretend, Emma." Emma stared at her, not fully understanding what was happening. Then Diane said it. "She isn't really family here." Silence, not the comfortable kind, the suffocating kind. Forks froze midair. Jason stared at his plate. Nicole's phone lowered for the first time all night. Even Emma's uncle looked stunned. Lily's smile disappeared instantly. Her small face crumpled in confusion. "What?" she whispered. Emma felt something inside her snap. She pushed back her chair so suddenly it scraped harshly against the hardwood floor. "That's enough." Her voice was calm, which somehow made it sharper. Diane lifted a brow. "I was only being honest to an 8-year-old." Lily's eyes were glossy now, lower lip trembling. Emma grabbed her daughter's hand immediately. "We're leaving." "Oh, don't be dramatic," Diane sighed. Emma laughed once short, humorless, dramatic. You just told my daughter she doesn't belong in this family. Diane crossed her arms. Well, technically, don't. The single word cut through the room like glass. Emma turned toward the door, but before she could leave, she noticed movement from the far end of the table. Her Uncle Robert was watching her, not casually, nervously, like a man holding on to a secret too heavy to keep. Their eyes met. He gave the smallest shake of his head, then mouthed two words, "Call me." Emma frowned but didn't stop. She scooped up Lily's jacket, ignored Diane calling after her, and walked straight out the front door. The cold evening air hit them instantly. Once inside the car, Lily finally asked the question Emma had been dreading. "Mom," Emma gripped the steering wheel. "Yes, baby." A pause, then, in the tiniest voice, "Why doesn't Grandma think I'm family?" Emma closed her eyes. For one painful second, she didn't trust herself to speak. Then she turned, tucked a strand of hair behind Lily's ear, and smiled through the ache in her chest. Because sometimes grown-ups forget what family really means. As she started the engine, Emma couldn't shake the image of Uncle Robert's face. Something was coming, and whatever it was, her mother clearly had no idea. Emma barely slept that night. Long after Lily had fallen asleep curled beneath a mountain of blankets, Emma sat alone at the kitchen table, replaying the dinner over and over in her mind. Not the argument, not even her mother's cruel words, but Lily's face, that tiny flicker of confusion before heartbreak settled in. Emma could handle Diane's criticism. She'd spent most of her life doing exactly that. But watching her mother direct that same coldness at an innocent child felt like crossing a line Emma could never uncross. Her coffee had long gone cold when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Emma frowned before answering. "Hello, Emma. It's Robert." Her uncle's voice was low and hurried. Emma straightened immediately. "What happened? Nothing happened," he said quickly. "At least not yet, but we need to talk." She glanced toward Lily's bedroom. "About last night, in a way." His hesitation told her everything. There was more. "Can you meet me?" he asked. 10 o'clock, Harbor Cafe. Emma agreed without another question. By mid-morning, she sat across from Uncle Robert in a quiet corner booth, hands wrapped around a fresh cup of coffee. The cafe overlooked the water, gray clouds hanging low over the lake like an unfinished thought. Robert looked older than usual. Tired, like he'd been carrying something heavy, he slid an envelope across the table. Emma stared at it. "What is this? Your father gave that to me 6 months before he passed." Her stomach tightened. "Why are you showing me now?" Robert exhaled slowly. "Because, after last night, I can't keep waiting." Emma hesitated before opening the envelope. Inside was a folded copy of legal paperwork and a short handwritten note in her father's familiar, slanted handwriting. "If you're reading this, Robert finally did the right thing." Emma's breath caught. She unfolded the larger document. At first, the legal language blurred together estate distribution, asset division, financial accounts. Then her eyes landed on one sentence. "Ownership of the family lake property shall transfer in full to my beloved granddaughter, Lily Harper, upon my passing." Emma blinked, then read it again and again. "No," she whispered. Robert nodded once. "Yes." Emma looked up sharply. "Dad left the lake house to Lily. He updated the will 3 weeks before his death." Her pulse pounded in her ears. "That can't be right." "It is. But why wouldn't anyone know?" Robert gave her a sad smile. "Because your father knew exactly how your mother would react." Emma leaned back against the booth, stunned. Her father had always been thoughtful, careful with every decision. Not impulsive, not sentimental without purpose. If he'd done this, there was a reason. Robert seemed to read her thoughts. "Your dad saw things, Emma." She swallowed hard. "What things?" "The way Diane treated you after the divorce, the comments, the judgment, the way she acted like Lily was temporary." Emma's throat tightened. Robert continued. "He hated it." A painful warmth spread through Emma's chest. Her father had noticed. He had seen everything she never said aloud. She was his favorite person, Robert added softly. Emma smiled despite herself. That much was true. Lily had been the center of her grandfather's universe. She was the only grandchild who cared more about his stories than his money, more interested in collecting rocks by the lake than staring at a screen. Robert chuckled faintly. Remember when she insisted on helping him repaint the dock? Emma laughed quietly. She got blue paint in her hair for a week. She told everyone it was fashion. For the first time since last night, Emma felt herself breathe. Then reality crashed back in. Wait, she said, lowering her voice. Mom doesn't know. Robert shook his head. Not yet. How is that possible? The official reading is next Friday. Your father requested everything remain sealed until then. Emma stared at the papers. Next Friday, 1 week. 1 week before Diane learned the lake house she treated like her personal inheritance was legally owned by the very child she dismissed as not family. The irony was almost too sharp to process. She's planning renovations, Emma muttered. Last night she was talking about replacing the dock. Robert actually smiled. That may come as a surprise to her. Emma should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt strangely conflicted. This is a lot to put on Lily. The property is held in trust until she's older. Robert explained. You'd manage it until then. That made more sense. Still, Emma shook her head. I can't believe he did this. He loved that house, Robert said. But more than that, he loved what it represented. Family, real family. Robert corrected gently. Emma looked down at the note again. A second line was scribbled underneath the first. Take care of my girls. Her vision blurred instantly. For a moment she was 8 years old again, sitting on the dock beside her father while he taught her how to skip stones. She blinked away tears. What do I do now? Robert leaned forward, honestly. Emma nodded. Nothing. She frowned. Let it happen. A slow realization settled over her. Her mother had humiliated Lily publicly, certain she held all the power. And in 7 days everything would change. Emma folded the papers carefully and slid them back into the envelope. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not sadness, but balance. As if life had quietly begun correcting itself. Robert stood to leave, placing a hand briefly on her shoulder. Your dad would be very pleased. Emma watched him walk away, then looked out at the lake beyond the cafe window. Still calm, still waiting, just like her. And somewhere in the distance, she could almost hear her father laughing. Friday arrived with the kind of heavy gray sky that made everything feel more serious. Emma parked outside the law office 10 minutes early, staring at the building through her windshield while her stomach twisted itself into knots. She still couldn't believe this was real. All week she had carried the knowledge like a hidden flame, careful not to let it show. Careful not to tell anyone. Especially Lily. Her daughter only knew one thing. Grandma had been mean and Mom promised everything would be okay. Emma intended to keep that promise. She grabbed her purse and stepped out into the chilly morning air. Inside, the waiting room was already full. Jason stood near the coffee station, scrolling through emails, looking bored rather than emotional. Nicole sat beside Diane on a leather couch, whispering something that made them both smirk. Diane looked perfectly composed. Confident, she wore a cream blazer and pearl earrings, as if she were attending a business acquisition instead of her late husband's will reading. Which, Emma thought dryly, wasn't entirely inaccurate. Emma, Diane said as she entered, not warm. Not apologetic, just acknowledgement. Emma gave a polite nod and sat in the chair farthest away. No one mentioned last week. Not the dinner, not Lily, not the fact that Diane had emotionally body-slammed an 8-year-old over mashed potatoes. Apparently, family etiquette had strange priorities. At exactly 11 o'clock, a tall man in a navy suit opened the conference room door. Good morning, I'm Michael Lawson. He gestured inside. If everyone could take a seat, we'll begin. The room was cold and overly neat, with polished wood, legal folders, and a long table too formal for family business. Emma sat quietly while Diane positioned herself at the head of the table, like a queen awaiting confirmation of her kingdom. Michael opened a folder. As requested by the late Richard Harper, we will now review the final terms of his estate. Hearing her father's full name out loud made Emma's chest tighten. She missed him most in moments like this, quiet, official, irreversible moments. The lawyer began reading. Small financial accounts were distributed first, a retirement fund to Diane, jewelry pieces to Nicole. Investment shares split between Jason and Emma. Robert received Grandpa's fishing boat, which made him smile faintly. All normal, all predictable, Diane relaxed visibly with each passing item. Emma almost felt secondhand embarrassment for what was coming. Then Michael adjusted his glasses and turned a page. There remains one final property asset. Diane sat straighter. There it was, the lake house. You could practically hear everyone mentally spending it. Michael cleared his throat. Regarding the family lake property located on Willow Lakes, Emma folded her hands in her lap. Jason leaned forward. Nicole actually put her phone away, and Diane smiled. A small, satisfied smile. Michael continued. Ownership shall transfer in full to my beloved granddaughter, Lily Harper, to be held in legal trust until the age of 18, with temporary management rights assigned to Emma Harper. Silence, pure, stunned, cinematic silence. Diane's smile disappeared so fast it was almost impressive. Nicole blinked. What? Jason laughed once, thinking it had to be a joke. Sorry, can you repeat that? Michael didn't blink. The lake property is legally assigned to Lily Harper. Diane's face lost all color. No, one word. Sharp, flat, absolute. Michael glanced down at the documents. This was Mr. Harper's final legally witnessed amendment. That's impossible, Diane snapped. Her voice echoed against the conference room walls. She's 8. Yes, she is not even his direct heir. Emma nearly smiled at the irony of that sentence. Michael remained professionally calm. Mr. Harper was within his rights to distribute his estate as he saw fit. Diane turned to Emma so quickly her chair screeched. You knew, not a question, an accusation. Emma met her gaze steadily. Yes, Jason whipped around. You knew about this? Emma nodded once, for a week. Nicole looked horrified, and you didn't say anything. Emma tilted her head slightly. Interesting. That's exactly how I felt when Mom called my daughter not family. That landed hard. Nicole sank back in her chair. Jason suddenly found the table fascinating, and Diane looked like someone had removed oxygen from the room. Her lips parted, but no words came. For once in her carefully curated life, she had no control, no angle. No polished comeback, just consequences. Michael slid a copy of the documents across the table. These papers are legally binding and final. Diane snatched them with trembling hands. This is ridiculous. Robert finally spoke. No, Diane, it's Richard. Everyone turned. Robert's voice was calm but firm. He knew exactly what he was doing. Diane stared at him in disbelief. You knew too. Robert shrugged lightly. Longer than Emma. That nearly finished her. Emma watched the realization unfold across her mother's face piece by piece. Not only had she lost the house, not only had the inheritance gone to the granddaughter she openly rejected, but Richard, her husband, had planned this deliberately, a final decision made in silence, a judgment written in legal ink. It was, Emma had to admit, devastatingly elegant. Then, as if sensing the room shifting beneath her, Diane suddenly changed tactics. Her expression softened with almost comical speed. Well, she said, forcing a brittle smile, Lily is still family, of course. Emma actually laughed. A small, disbelieving sound. There it was, the pivot, fast enough to cause whiplash. No. Emma said evenly, standing from her chair. Don't do that. Diane's smile faltered. Emma, you were very clear last week. Emma picked up her purse. So let me be equally clear now. She leaned forward slightly. My daughter may be 8, but apparently she owns better property than all of us combined. Jason choked on his coffee. Even Michael coughed to hide a laugh. Emma straightened. We're done here. She turned and walked toward the door, feeling every eye in the room follow her. Just before leaving, she glanced back once. Diane was still frozen in her chair, gripping the paperwork like it might magically rewrite itself. But it wouldn't. Some things, once written, are permanent. And for the first time in a very long time, Emma felt something close to peace. 3 weeks later, Emma stood on the dock watching Lily skip stones across the lake. The water glittered beneath the afternoon sun, soft ripples spreading outward in perfect circles, the same dock. The same peaceful breeze, the same familiar scent of pine and lake water, but everything felt different now. Lighter, as if the house itself had exhaled. "Mom, I got 4 skips." Lily grinned proudly, holding up the small flat stone like a trophy. Emma smiled. "You're getting better than me. That's because Grandpa taught me." That familiar ache touched Emma's chest, but this time it came with warmth instead of pain. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind of legal paperwork, trust documents, property management forms, and an avalanche of family drama. Jason called twice, pretending he was just checking in. Nicole sent a suspiciously sweet text asking if Lily wanted a girls' weekend, and Diane had been silent until now. Emma heard footsteps behind her on the dock and turned. Speak of the devil. Diane approached carefully, dressed far too elegantly for a lakeside conversation, as though she still believed class could function as emotional armor. She stopped a few feet away. "Hello, Emma." Emma folded her arms. "Mom." No hostility, no warmth, just acknowledgement. Diane glanced at Lily, who was kneeling near the edge of the dock collecting smooth stones into a bucket. "She's gotten taller." Emma almost laughed, an observation 7 years overdue. Yes, that's what children do. Diane ignored the comment. "I was hoping we could talk." Emma studied her mother's face. She looked older, not physically, exactly, but diminished somehow. Less polished, like life had finally introduced her to inconvenience. "What about?" Diane hesitated, which alone felt historic. "The house, of course." Emma raised a brow. "What about it?" Diane cleared her throat. "Well, despite everything, it has been in the family for decades." Emma waited. "And I was hoping," Diane continued carefully, "that perhaps the family could still use it occasionally." There it was. Not an apology, a reservation request. Emma glanced toward Lily, then back at her mother. "You want access to the house you told my daughter she didn't belong in." Diane visibly winced. When she didn't answer, Emma continued, "I'm open to discussing it." Hope flickered across Diane's face. But under one condition. The hope paused. What condition? Emma turned slightly and called out, "Lily, honey, come here for a second." Lily jogged over, cheeks pink from the sun. "What's up?" Emma rested a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Grandma has something she'd like to say." Diane looked horrified. Not by the concept of apologizing, Emma noticed, but by the audience. Good. Some lessons deserve witnesses. For a long moment, Diane simply stared at Lily. This small girl with messy hair, grass-stained sneakers, and absolutely no awareness of the power shift that had rearranged the family hierarchy. Finally, Diane crouched slightly, awkwardly, like someone unfamiliar with both humility and knees. "Lily," she began stiffly, "I owe you an apology." Lily blinked. Diane inhaled. "What I said to you at dinner was hurtful and wrong." The words sounded physically painful. Emma almost admired the effort. "You are family," Diane continued, "and I should never have made you feel otherwise." Silence followed. Emma looked down at Lily, curious what she'd say. Her daughter was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully in the way children sometimes do when adults least expect wisdom. Then Lily nodded. "Okay. Just that, no drama, no punishment speech, pure acceptance." But then she added one more thing. "Grandpa told me family is who makes you feel safe." Diane froze. Lily tilted her head innocently. "So maybe you can practice." Emma had to bite the inside of her cheek to stop herself from smiling too hard. Diane looked as though an 8-year-old had just professionally evaluated her emotional resume. Which technically had happened. After a long pause, Diane gave a small nod. "I'll try." It wasn't a grand transformation. No tears, no cinematic reconciliation, just a crack, a tiny fracture in years of pride, and honestly, Emma found that more believable. Sometimes people don't become better overnight. Sometimes they just become aware they need to, Diane stood. So may I still visit sometimes? Emma pretended to think about it, then shrugged. As long as you remember whose house it is. Diane glanced at Lily, a child currently wearing one rain boot and one sandal, the official owner of the family legacy. There was something almost poetic about it. I'll remember, Diane said quietly. She left shortly after. Once she was gone, Lily tugged Emma's sleeve. Was that revenge? Emma burst out laughing. Where did you hear that word? Cartoons, of course. Emma knelt in front of her daughter. No, sweetheart, revenge is about hurting someone back. What's this then? Emma looked around the lake house the dock her father rebuilt by hand, the porch where Lily once made mud pies with Grandpa, the golden sunlight dancing across the water. This, Emma said softly, is called a happy ending. That evening, mother and daughter sat side by side at the edge of the dock as sunset painted the lake gold and pink. Lily leaned against Emma's shoulder. Do you think Grandpa knows? Emma looked out at the horizon and smiled. Oh, she said, I think Grandpa knows everything. And somewhere in the quiet rustle of pine trees and gentle waves against the dock, it felt like he was there. Still watching, still protecting his girls, exactly as promised.